The door opened, and everything I thought I was walking into collapsed. It wasn't her standing there, not the girl I was supposed to meet, but her mother. Mid-40s, robe loosely tied, hair still damp from a shower. She froze for a second, hand gripping the edge of the doorframe, as though she hadn't expected me either. The hallway went quiet, too quiet, like even the hum of the refrigerator in the background was waiting for one of us to speak. "Hi," I said, my voice breaking the stillness a little too suddenly. She gave a small nod, eyes flicking over me, careful but not dismissive. "You must be him." The way she said it carried weight. Not his name. Not even her daughter's boyfriend. Just him. I stepped inside when she moved aside, the faint scent of her shampoo catching me off guard, warm, clean, with something floral underneath. My jacket brushed her arm as I passed, and I swear she stiffened, the robe tightening against her body as if she hadn't meant for me to notice the closeness. She didn't fill the silence with chatter. She didn't have to. Her presence alone pressed against me, more than words could. She moved with an ease that only comes with years, but there was something careful in it too, like every gesture was chosen, pared down, efficient. I put my hands in my pockets, suddenly aware of how young I must have looked standing in her kitchen, sneakers squeaking against the tile. She glanced at me from the side as she poured herself water, the light catching a strand of silver in her hair. "You're early," she finally said. I nodded. Guess I was eager. The corner of her mouth tugged, the closest thing to a smile so far. "She's not home yet." She didn't say when she'd be. The silence came again, heavier this time. I watched the way her fingers tapped against the glass she held, the tiniest rhythm betraying nerve she wouldn't admit. "You want some water?" she asked, already reaching for another glass. "Sure," I said. When she handed it to me, our fingers brushed, quick, nothing deliberate, but enough to draw my eyes to hers. For a beat too long, neither of us looked away. Something in her gaze wasn't motherly. It wasn't anything I could name without stepping somewhere dangerous. I cleared my throat. "Thanks." She only nodded, but she stayed close, leaning against the counter, her robe falling just slightly as she shifted her weight. It wasn't calculated, I don't think. It was just real. And maybe that's what made it worse, or better. The kitchen clock ticked louder than it should have. My glass of water sat untouched in my hand, condensation sliding down my knuckles. She noticed. "Nervous?" I let out a breath, half a laugh. "A little." Her eyes softened, just for a second. "You'll be fine," she said, voice lower, quieter, almost tender. But then she pulled back, straightened, as if reminding herself who she was, who I was, and why this moment couldn't linger. And yet it did. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway broke it. She glanced toward the window, robe tightening again, composure snapping back into place. "She's here," she whispered, though her eyes stayed on me. The front door opened, breaking the spell. Her daughter's voice rang down the hall, light and unbothered, calling my name. But I didn't move. Not yet. I was still caught in the way her mother looked at me before the sound pulled her away, quick, like she'd been caught in something she shouldn't have let show. By the time her daughter appeared, smiling and tossing her bag onto a chair, her mother had retreated. Robe tied tighter, glass rinsed and placed carefully into the sink, her expression smoothed into something neutral. We spent the evening like any other, or at least we tried to. Dinner, small talk, laughter where it belonged. But even as I sat across from my girlfriend, I couldn't stop noticing the woman at the head of the table. How she avoided my eyes. How sometimes she didn't, and the contact landed heavier than it should have. It wasn't that she was glamorous in some magazine way. It was subtler, the kind of beauty worn in the lines near her eyes, the curve of her neck, the calm steadiness she carried. She didn't need to draw attention. It came to her anyway. And maybe that was what made me restless. Later, when her daughter went upstairs to shower, I offered to clear the plates. She let me, but when I turned back to the kitchen, she was already there, drying glasses with a towel. Too close again, though neither of us stepped aside. "You don't have to help," she said softly, though she didn't sound like she wanted me to stop. "I don't mind." Her hand brushed mine as she took a plate. Not an accident, or maybe it was, but she didn't move it away right away either. The warmth of her fingers lingered longer than it should have. I glanced at her. "You always do everything yourself?" A faint smile, almost sad. "Old habits." There was something in her tone that pulled at me, a history I wasn't supposed to ask about but wanted to anyway. "Your husband," I started, but stopped when her posture stiffened. "Not in the picture." She didn't look at me when she said it, just folded the towel neatly in her hands like she needed something to occupy them. "Hasn't been, for a long time." I let the silence stretch. I didn't push, though every part of me wanted to know more. She wasn't the kind of woman who spilled her life easily. But she surprised me. When someone leaves, you get used to filling the spaces yourself. At first, it feels unbearable. Then it becomes routine. You stop waiting for the door to open. Her voice was steady, but her hands were too careful, folding and unfolding the same towel as though her control was the only thing keeping her upright. I didn't know what to say that wouldn't sound young, naive. So I said nothing. I just stood close enough that when she finally turned to put the towel down, her shoulder grazed my chest. We both froze. She looked up at me, and I swear for a heartbeat it felt like the room belonged to no one else. "You're too young to understand," she said quietly. But her breath was near my cheek, her voice lower than before, and the way her eyes stayed on mine contradicted every word. I wanted to answer. To tell her she was wrong. But the sound of the shower upstairs cut through the tension like a warning. She stepped back first, breaking the contact, smoothing her robe like armor. "You should go sit in the living room. She'll be down soon." I hesitated, my chest tight with everything unspoken. Then I moved past her, but not before my hand brushed against hers on the counter. Just a fraction longer than necessary. She didn't pull away. And that pause, that quiet, dangerous pause, felt louder than anything either of us could say. It happened late, when the night had thinned and her daughter had drifted upstairs with a yawn and a goodnight kiss. I stayed. Not long, I told myself. Just a few more minutes. She lingered too, sitting across from me in the living room, robe replaced by a sweater that still hung loose on her frame. The lamp between us cast everything in warm shadow, too intimate for what it was supposed to be. "You don't sleep much?" I asked. Her smile was small, weary. "Not when the house is this quiet." Quiet can be loud. The word settled. I wanted to ask what kept her awake, but her eyes flicked away as if answering would cost too much. We sat in the hush, the kind where every shift of fabric, every breath, feels louder than it should. I leaned forward without meaning to, elbows on my knees. She noticed. Her hand toyed with the edge of her sleeve, knuckles pale from the grip. "Your girlfriend," she said suddenly, tone clipped, like she needed to remind both of us. "She trusts you." It stung. Not because it wasn't true, but because of the way her voice faltered on trust. I opened my mouth, then closed it. Nothing I could say wouldn't sound like an admission. The silence thickened. And then the phone on the table buzzed, loud, jarring. Both of us startled. Her daughter's name lit up the screen. "Be right back, forgot my charger at Mia's. Don't leave yet." Her mother's eyes darted to mine, wide for once. Vulnerable. We weren't supposed to be sitting here alone, not like this, not long enough for someone to wonder. She reached for the phone at the same time I did. Our hands collided. Neither of us pulled away. Her fingers against mine were warm, trembling just slightly. I caught her breath hitch, the kind you try to disguise but can't. Don't, she whispered, though I hadn't moved closer yet. Her eyes said something else entirely. I should have let go. Instead, I traced her knuckles with my thumb before I even realized what I was doing. She swallowed hard. You don't know what this would cost. Her words cracked me open, not warning, but confession. The space between us vanished in slow motion, her face inches from mine, breath brushing my lips. The air pulsed with a question neither of us dared answer. My heart pounded so loud I thought she could hear it. Then, the sharp sound of keys at the door. We jerked apart like guilty teenagers, her sweater shifting as she straightened, my hands clenching against my knees. A voice carried up the hallway, her daughter calling, cheerful, oblivious. By the time she entered the living room, her mother was calm again, glass of water in hand, like nothing had happened. I tried to mimic it, to steady my voice when I said hello, but my pulse betrayed me. And yet, when her daughter turned her back to grab her charger, her mother's eyes flicked to mine. Not denial. Not regret. A silent admission, we both felt it. And no matter how much distance we tried to put between us, it had already pulled us closer than either of us could resist. I told myself I wouldn't stay late again. That tonight I'd leave early, before the house grew too quiet, before temptation had a chance to breathe. But promises to yourself are the easiest to break. Her daughter had gone upstairs hours ago. The glow of the television lingered, muted, as we sat on opposite ends of the couch. Close enough to share space, far enough to pretend we weren't. I could feel her there. Every shift in her posture. The faint heat radiating from her side of the sofa. Finally, she spoke. This can't keep happening. Her voice was low, almost a whisper, like she was afraid of the walls overhearing. I swallowed. What's happening? Her eyes snapped to mine, sharp, accusing, but underneath that, afraid. Don't do that. Don't pretend you don't know. The air tightened. I leaned closer before I realized it, elbows on my knees, my voice dropping to match hers. Then say it. Because I don't think I'm the only one. Her breath caught. She opened her mouth, closed it, then pressed her fingers to her temple like she could will herself back into control. You're too young. I'm not here thinking about her right now, I cut in, more force in my voice than I meant to. Silence. Her chest rose and fell, too fast, betraying what her words tried to cage. I shifted, closing the space between us. My hand hovered, then brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. My fingers grazed her skin, soft, impossibly warm. She didn't pull back. Her eyes fluttered shut, just for a second. When she opened them again, something had cracked open. You don't understand what this would mean, she whispered, voice breaking in the middle. If anyone, if she doesn't see me the way you do, I said, my voice rough, barely audible. Not like this. She shuddered, like the words hit her somewhere she couldn't guard. Her hand moved, hesitant, then landed on my wrist, holding me there against her cheek. A touch that wasn't accidental, wasn't motherly. You have no idea how dangerous this is, she said, but her thumb stroked my skin as if contradicting every word. The world shrank to the sound of our breathing. To the thundering of my pulse against her palm. Slowly, she leaned, or maybe I did, until her forehead rested lightly against mine. Her scent was everywhere, soft and clean, dizzying. I whispered, tell me to stop. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The pause stretched, unbearable, every heartbeat screaming with the answer she wasn't giving. I tilted closer, the space between our mouths narrowing, my hand sliding to the back of her neck. Her breath fanned across my lips, uneven, shallow. And then, the stairs creaked. A voice floated down, sleepy, casual, Mom? You still up? She flinched, pulling back so fast it hurt. Her hand dropped, her body stiffening, every trace of softness locked away. I sat there, breathless, chest aching with the weight of everything unsaid. Her daughter's footsteps padded lightly down the hall, door opening and shutting upstairs again. The interruption passed. The moment didn't. She turned back to me, eyes shining, torn between fury and something she couldn't name. And then she whispered, almost like a curse, "You have no idea what you've done to me." The next evening, I told myself I wouldn't go over. That it was safer if I gave space, let the air clear, let her regain the control she always seemed to wrestle back at the last possible second. But she called. Not her daughter, her. The number lit up on my phone, and before I could think, I answered. Her voice was quiet, clipped. "Can you come by? Just for a moment." I didn't ask why. I went. When she opened the door, she wasn't in a robe this time. She wore jeans and a fitted sweater, her hair pulled back. Still, her hand gripped the doorframe the same way she had that first night, like she was bracing herself. "You shouldn't have called me," I said, though I stepped inside anyway. "I know." She shut the door, leaned against it, arms crossed tight across her chest. "But we have a problem." Her eyes wouldn't meet mine at first, and when they finally did, they were sharp with fear. "She heard us." The air dropped out of the room. "What?" "Last night. On the stairs." Her voice broke, softer now. "She asked me this morning why you were still here." Why my voice sounded different. I swallowed, throat dry. "What did you tell her?" Her arms tightened across her body. That she imagined it. That I was tired. A pause. But she didn't believe me. I stepped closer without meaning to, my pulse roaring. "And you think she's not stupid," she snapped, then winced at her own sharpness. She pressed her fingers to her forehead, whispering, "She's already watching us." Her whole body trembled. Not dramatic, not obvious, just the faint quiver in her hands when she tried to smooth her hair back, the way she avoided standing too close to me but kept drifting near anyway. "She can't know," she said. "Not now. Not ever." I should have stepped back. Instead, I moved closer. Close enough to see the fine line of her lashes, the way her breath hitched as she realized how little space was left between us. "You called me here just to say that?" I asked, voice low. Her eyes flicked to my mouth before darting away. "I called because I can't stop thinking about it." The words hung in the air like lightning, striking both of us at once. She pressed a hand against my chest as if to push me back, but her palm stayed there, warm, lingering. "Every time I tell myself to end this, her voice cracked. "I find myself wanting the opposite." I covered her hand with mine, pressing it tighter against my heartbeat. "So do I." Her knees bent slightly, like she'd lost her balance. She leaned against me, forehead brushing my jaw, her breath unsteady. "This is wrong," she whispered, but her fingers curled into my shirt. "It's so wrong." I bent my head, lips grazing her temple, the faintest touch. She shivered, her body betraying her even as her words resisted. "I don't care," I said, voice rough, almost desperate. She froze, then tilted her head back to look at me. Her eyes burned, half fear, half hunger. "If we do this, there's no going back." Her lips were inches from mine. Everything in me ached to close the distance, to finally break the unbearable tension. And then, from upstairs, a door slammed. We both jumped. She pressed a finger to her lips, panic flashing across her face. Her hand slipped from my chest, and she stepped back, fast, like she'd been burned. But the look in her eyes, raw, unguarded, said the damage was already done. She drew a shaky breath, whispering words that felt like a vow and a warning all at once, "Next time. I won't stop." The night it finally broke, the house was almost too quiet. Her daughter had left earlier than expected, off to a friend's for the weekend. I shouldn't have stayed. I told myself a dozen times to walk out before the silence swallowed us whole. But I didn't. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, 2 untouched mugs of coffee between us. She stared at hers as if it could anchor her. I couldn't take my eyes off her. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, not lifting her gaze. "I know," I said. Neither of us moved. The clock ticked, the refrigerator hummed, and still we stayed, like magnets too exhausted to fight the pull. Finally, she pushed back her chair, stood, and turned toward the sink. I followed, too close, too fast, until I was right behind her. She froze, hands braced against the counter, her shoulders rising and falling with every breath. "You're making this impossible," she said. Her voice trembled, not with anger, but something heavier. I leaned closer, my words brushing her ear. "Or maybe it was impossible from the start." Her head bowed, a tiny shiver running through her. "If I let this happen, I'll hate myself." "Then hate me," I whispered. Slowly, she turned, and we were face to face, inches apart. Her eyes searched mine, desperate and defiant, like she was looking for an excuse to stop and couldn't find one. My hand lifted, hovering, before finally tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. My fingers lingered against her skin, soft and trembling. She closed her eyes, just for a moment, leaning into the touch. When she opened them again, they were glassy, torn between resistance and surrender. "You don't understand what this means." "I do," I said. My voice was raw, stripped bare. "And I don't care." The space between us vanished. She pressed her forehead to mine, breath ragged, hands clutching at the fabric of my shirt as though she needed to hold on or fall apart. "Say it," I whispered. Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, her hand slid to my cheek, and the air between us burned. Our mouths hovered, so close that even breathing felt dangerous. For a heartbeat, we stayed there, teetering on the edge, knowing that crossing it meant losing everything safe, everything familiar. And then she kissed me. It wasn't neat or careful. It was desperate, trembling, like something stolen that neither of us had the right to claim but couldn't let go of anymore. I held her, pulling her closer, her body pressed against mine, every line of her trembling with equal parts fear and relief. She broke away first, gasping, eyes wide with everything she couldn't hide anymore. "This changes everything," she whispered, her voice cracked but certain. I nodded, still holding her, forehead against hers. "I know." For the first time, neither of us looked away. And in that silence, in the mess and the ruin of the choice we'd made, there was clarity. Whatever came next, we finally understood each other. The kiss changed everything, and nothing. We didn't speak right away. We stayed there in the kitchen, bodies close, breaths tangled, both of us trying to find steady ground in the silence. Her hands trembled where they clung to my shirt, and I held her tighter, afraid she might retreat back into the walls she always rebuilt. Finally, she whispered, "I can't believe we did that." I rested my forehead against hers. "I can." She let out a shaky laugh, half disbelief, half surrender. "You're too young to know what this means. The world won't make this easy." "Nothing worth it ever is," I said softly. Her eyes searched mine, as if looking for the boy I was supposed to be, the one who might flinch or falter. But I didn't. I stayed right there, steady, waiting. Slowly, her hands loosened their grip, sliding down my arms until her fingers found mine. She laced them together, tentative but real. "Do you regret it?" I asked. Her gaze softened, the guardedness finally giving way to something warmer. She shook her head. "I've regretted too many things in my life already. Not this." We moved to the couch, not apart but together this time, shoulders touching, hands still intertwined. The television flickered on low, forgotten background light, while the weight of the moment settled between us. She leaned into me, her head resting against my shoulder. It felt natural, like we'd been circling this closeness for far too long. I lifted a hand and brushed my fingers through her hair, letting them rest at the nape of her neck. She sighed, not heavy, not anxious, but almost content. For a long while, neither of us spoke. And when we finally did, it was barely above a whisper. "What happens now?" she asked. I turned slightly, pressing a gentle kiss against her forehead. "We figure it out. Together." She closed her eyes at that, her hand tightening around mine. There was no perfect plan, no neat answer for the age between us, or the questions her daughter would eventually ask. But for the first time, none of that mattered as much as the warmth of her body pressed against mine, the quiet promise in the way she stayed close. The fear was still there, yes. But so was something else, something stronger. And as we sat there, wrapped in the quiet glow of a choice that had finally been made, we both knew it wasn't just desire anymore. It was the start of something neither of us could ignore. She tilted her head up, lips brushing my jaw before whispering, almost like a secret meant for no one but me, "Don't let go." "I won't," I murmured. And I didn't point one.